Welcome to the Scoop World Order Shocking Recruiting Edition. We had a little bit of a shocker today. We're going to survive that. We're going to break down what happened with the Kingston Villamuasa recruitment as he lands at Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman. We're going to go into happy mode and going to watch some Aaron Scott tape. Just break out where we're at. Media Day starts this week. Camp starts literally in about 10 days. So training camp is here. The NFL is starting to break training camp. It's the best time of the year, folks. Football is about to get cranked up. The Hall of Fame game is going to be in about a week. So first official football game of the year is coming quickly, and we are here for this season. That being said, as always, we passed 20,000. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, it's all because of you guys. We appreciate you guys so much. We are having a fantastic run right now, and I just appreciate you guys for all your help. That being said, I'm going to bring in my good friend Nevadabuck. Nevada, how are you?
I'm doing great. This will be the last time I talk about subscriber numbers for a while, but shot past 20,000, hitting 20,100. Want to just thank everybody so much for subscribing. I promise you're going to leave this podcast. You're going to be a smarter fan. You're going to be a more educated fan, and you're going to have a fan that's got kind of a glimpse of what when people say stuff, what they mean. And I think with this Kingston recruitment, this brings a number of issues to light that we can talk about and stuff that you're not going to hear anywhere else. So I'm ready and raring to go.
Yeah, obviously, a lot of people were expecting Kingston Villamuasa, including Ohio State, to commit to Ohio State today. He kind of flips last second to Notre Dame. Again, I've lived these, as a GA, offensive GA, where you sometimes, there's certain schools. Notre Dame's one of those schools where if a kid is devout, if a kid is goes to a parochial school, a Catholic school, they've got a really strong pull. I remember we lost a couple of kids from Cleveland St. Ignatius that went to Notre Dame instead of Ohio State. Jimmy Byrne, Liam Eichenberg, Tommy Eichenberg's older brother, a kid that I absolutely loved, was an NFL tackle. We lost him to Notre Dame. A lot of people, wanted to blame Ed Warner, or they wanted to blame, Stud or whoever the line coach is. Say, look, if Ed Warner, who coached at Notre Dame before he came to Ohio State, was the O-line coach at Notre Dame, he'd have gotten Jimmy Byrne and Liam Eichenberg. I don't think it had anything to do with the line coach. I think it had everything to do with the school and the prestige. Notre Dame's just one of those weird schools. Like, we lost Gerby Lambert, is a kid who a lot of people were upset about. He's a top 5 tackle in the country. He's from Massachusetts. Very, very intelligent kid. Family is huge on academics, and we lost him to Notre Dame. So a lot of people want to crucify Justin Fry the same way that they crucified Greg Studrawa for a long time. And if Justin Fry was the line coach at Notre Dame, I think he would have gotten Gerby Lambert just because of the Notre Dame thing. It's just one of those weird things. Like I said, I've lived it. I know people don't want to hear that. It's not an excuse. It's just reality sometimes. We lost Quentin Nelson, a guy that I loved, to Notre Dame because the prestige of Notre Dame. His dad loved Notre Dame. And Harry Heaton is a fantastic coach, but he wasn't some whiz bang recruiter. But they loved Notre Dame. So, Nevada, what was your reaction? I mean, has there ever been kind of a weirder stretch for the Ohio State beat with these guys being seemingly locked in and then flipping like this?
Well, look, I think it's a function of NIL and other things that are going on. Obviously, this is not an NIL case, but in the NIL era, recruiting stuff is always going to be fluid. It can change with a phone call. That's why we've kind of pivoted away from recruiting information to inside information, because I think recruiting information right now is it's so fluid. Um, it's unless you're doing the edits, making the announcement, it's tough for anybody to be right. And that's why some guys that have been historically right for so long and stuff are just missing like crazy and all these recruits. That's number one thing. The number one point to remember on this is the game has changed. And, what used to be information and solid information right now is really tough. It's a tough business. Now, having said that, let's talk about the Kingston situation. One, when there's blame to be assigned, we will assign blame. In this case, the kid is literally quoted as saying, I couldn't see myself at Notre Dame. I read Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, and it said, go ye with the faith that you cannot be seen. And so I picked Notre Dame because of that. You can't sell through that. There's nothing to do. Like I want to be mad at James Laurinaitis. I want to be mad at Jim Knowles. I want to be mad at Ryan Day. You can't be mad at anybody. There's nothing you can do in a situation like that. When something like that happens, sometimes you just have to say, stuff happens. We just, it just happened. And that's unfortunate. It's disappointing, but that's just the way it is with that. And religion's a funny thing. Religion causes people to do a lot of amazing things and a lot of weird things. And, if your views are not aligned with religion, you know, any job you have, any relationship you have, anything you have can get out of whack in a hurry if your religious views go out of whack. And on this one, I can tell you the most surprised people in the room on all this were USC insiders and Notre Dame insiders because they didn't have this one. And this goes down, back to the Sharif Floyd, I had a dream type of thing where, this was just one for the books. I mean, he read in the book of Hebrews, and it told him to go with his faith, and so he took a leap of blind faith to the place he couldn't see himself. So that's one. Two, when you read words like an OSU insider said, we got to pivot, or this, or blah, blah, that's Mark Pantoni. That's Mark Pantoni. So whenever you see that on any of these other blogs or any stuff that they talk about their quoting stuff, it's Mark Pantoni. So Mark Pantoni's just, that's what he's saying. That's where he's moving the stuff towards. And I know they want to blame Jim Knowles on this stuff and say, well, they got to do this, they got to do that. This one isn't Knowles' fault. If it was Knowles' fault, believe me, we'd be the first ones to say it. But like, this is just happening. So I think when you see that stuff and you see them starting to kind of try to shovel blame away from, the experts that have been picking this stuff through an OSU source towards Jim Knowles, just know where that's coming from. That's where it's coming from. Pantoni's ultimately responsible for recruiting at Ohio State. So when stuff like this happens, it doesn't make him look good, and they want to show some blame. So who's going to be the whipping boy on this one? Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles is going to be the whipping boy for this one because of the book of Hebrews. And to me, is that fair? I don't think that's fair, but it is what it is. To me, what's much more fair is if our defense sucks this year, let's fire Jim Knowles. If our defense doesn't improve this year, let's be mad at Jim Knowles. If our defense isn't a force, the team strength on the team this year, let's all riot and be mad at Jim Knowles. But being mad at Jim Knowles over Kingston or trying to kill him with little anonymous little barbs from stuff, yeah, I think that's not the best, but that's just my opinion on it. That's my blurb. That's where I stand on Kingston. That's the real stuff. That's how I really feel. I haven't talked to you, Kirk, because you and I have been running around this weekend. It's been a crazy weekend, as you're well aware. Don't know where you stand on this. Don't know your opinion. I would love to hear it.
I mean, for me, it's like I wrote this on BuckeyeScoop.com, guys. We've been on the board all day, and I just said, look, if you trade everything, if you trade Ryan Day, his entire coaching staff, his entire team to Notre Dame, and then you get back Marcus Freeman and his entire, Al Golden and Al Washington and everyone else that they have and all their team, then Ryan Day and Jim Knowles and James Laurinaitis are happy because it's Notre Dame. Like they would be getting Kingston. Like I don't really think any of the I think all of the coaches did fine in this recruitment. I think that James Laurinaitis did a great job. I think Al Washington did a great job. Whatever. But I think that the aspect of Notre Dame with their religious thing, sometimes that is the ultimate trump card, in recruiting. So again, I don't make excuses for Ohio State. I never make excuses for Ohio State, but I just think that sometimes I've sat in those meetings where we found out a kid was going to Notre Dame, and it's like, like with Ed Warner literally came from Notre Dame, and we lost kids to Notre Dame. And I was like, well, if Ed was still at Notre Dame as the line coach, he probably would have gotten that kid. If James Laurinaitis and Jim Knowles were the defensive coordinator and the linebacker coach at Notre Dame, they probably would have gotten Kingston. So I don't know what you're supposed to do. Again, and honestly, frankly, I'm sure he's a great kid. God bless him, whatever. But like the program will survive somehow. I mean, I know people, they always like to have this next like, oh my God, how are we ever going to make it without Kingston, Villanueva? And again, I think he's a very good player, but he's not a quarterback and he's not a superstar. Like if we can lose Dylan Raiola and survive and the B can go on, then we can lose this kid and we'll be okay. I promise. This is on to the next one. And again, in the era of the transfer portal, we might see this kid again. I mean, like E.A. Gaote, the kid that went to SC, he ended up coming to Ohio State after a lot of us, the kid that was from Bishop Gorman, and he was, a 5-star kid, and, oh my God, we lost him to SC, however, so he ended up coming here. So, things work out, in the era of the transfer portal, when we miss on a kid like this, I don't care, because it means we can go get a kid who's, got 30 career starts, and he enters the portal, and then he can play linebacker. And again, I'm not even worried about linebacker for a couple of years, because we got CJ Hicks, we got Sonny Styles. We got guys behind Steele and Tommy that are like chomping at the bit, ready to go. So, I'll be good. Again, I recruit like the way college football is with the transfer portal. All I care about is this year's team. I'm not worried about 2 years from now, 3 years from now, because everything can change. Everything can change. Ryan Day could go to the New England Patriots. The team can win a national title, they can lose a national title, but they can go hit the portal and fill their needs. And they did that this year. Everyone's like, oh my God, how are we gonna fill an offensive line with those tackles? We got Josh Simmons, he's gonna start at right tackle. Boom. Congrats. Everything's fixed. We need a tight end. We can go find a tight end. Like wherever there's a weakness in modern college football, now the NIL's getting tuned up and whatever, we're gonna be competitive and we're just gonna be fine. So was that fair and accurate, Nevada? Is that about what you expected out of me? Because again, I've lost these battles to Notre Dame literally as a coach, and sometimes when a kid says, I go to Cleveland St. Ignatius, I'm Catholic, my family's Catholic, I love the blue blood thing, I love it's a little more preppy to go to Notre Dame. Like I don't know how Ohio State's supposed to combat the religious thing, because we don't have a religious part of our university. We're not a Catholic school, so. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I think that there's certain levels of being religious. I think most of us identify as being religious in one way, shape, or form. My kids went to Catholic school when we lived overseas. I went to Catholic school growing up. Even though I wasn't Catholic, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even though we were Episcopal, but those are the best schools to go to, and you go to different places, you do different things. So you're never really sure how devout someone is, and if someone's going to make a life decision to go to a place that they can't see themselves, they don't feel they fit in, based upon Scripture, well, that's just different level. I mean, that's just different level, and that's when that happens, you just tip your hat. And I'm not convinced that we won't see him down the road, because stuff like this sometimes he might read another piece of scripture that says, don't be fooled by the double talk of the act of faith. Go with your heart to your loved one. And he might go, oh, that means Ohio State, and flip. So, we don't, you don't know, but I think this one's a weird one. I think we just kind of tap it up, move on to the next one. But I do want us to get out of the habit. Again, I think we got to be better fans, and we tend to there was a saying in the movie Moneyball, and I thought it was the best line in Moneyball. And he was talking, Billy Beane was talking about how much he hated to lose, and he's like, I hate to lose way more than I want to win. And I'm the same way, and I know that that's a dominant feature of my life. And I think for a lot of Ohio State fans, we tend to focus on the things we lose as opposed to our wins. I mean, we talk about Aaron Scott. We get him. How long will the thread be? Versus if we don't get him, how long will the thread be? And it's like, man, we got to be better than that. We've got to realize that we've got to celebrate the stuff that's good, and we've got to keep the stuff that's bad in perspective. Because how many times when something goes wrong, I'm trying to think about players that we've lost, legitimate loss, that have come back to like, oh my God, we really needed that guy. Because every time it seems like the most important, the Jason Gwaltneys or the Prescott Burgess or,
Oh my
whomever,
God.
name the player. We can just go through the list of players of guys that we just, Jackson Carman, we absolutely had to have Jackson Carman.
Chantrell Henderson. He's the greatest one of all time.
Kyle Kalis. I mean,
Yeah.
like we just, there's so many times where it's just like, it's just despair and all hope is lost, and it always works out. And I think, when I'm trying to think about a single time, I mean, I have to go back to literally, and this is going back, I mean, way back. I mean, like Charles Woodson or something. I mean, we're talking about that far to having a guy that I'm like, wow, we missed on him, and we really could have used him, and he really could have helped us. I mean, I mean, how many guys have been like that? You've been around football at every level, player, coach, analyst, All American. How many guys have we really missed on that? You're like, wow, I really wish we had him on the team.
I mean, I remember, in 2012, 2013, we got absolutely just murdered by Michigan and Notre Dame on the recruiting trail. And we missed us. And there's some guys like Quentin Nelson. Absolutely, you want Quentin Nelson. But then there's Kalis. There was Chris Fox or whatever his name was from Colorado. It was like our class was just so far behind, those other classes. And then like when you fast forward 5-6 years and those guys are all graduated and you can kind of do an audit of the damage. And, in like 13, like we got like Jamarco Jones, who turned out to be, he's still in the NFL, great player. And again, with the O-line, when you take 5, you're probably going to miss on 2. 2 of them are probably not going to be able to play. You hope if you can get 3 out of 5 to play, you're the greatest recruiter that's ever lived. But really, you're going to be probably like 55%, just because that just kind of is what it is. But I really like. I go back to Prescott Burgess. I mean, it was like the world was ending when we didn't get Prescott Burgess. When we didn't get Sean Crable on my signing day, goes to Michigan. The world was ending, and it's like you look back at it. Mario Manningham is a guy that I was like, I thought he was a fantastic player, and somehow like we had Ted Ginn and Gonzo and Hartline and Santonio, and we didn't really miss him. I mean, even though he was a really good player and he won that Super Bowl with the Giants against the Patriots, and but somehow we survived. And again, and with Kingston, again, I'm not giving some sermon of we're allowed to miss every recruit, but like if you really break down the dynamics of who is getting blamed right now, like I don't know what Jim Knowles or James Lawrence could have done to defeat a guy that reads scripture and says, go to the place that you do not see yourself at, like Notre Dame. And that's what makes it pick Notre Dame. Instead of SC, which is the local place, which is on the come up right now, and Ohio State, where seemingly most people, Notre Dame insiders are saying, I think it's going to be Ohio State. Ohio State insiders, I think it's going to be Ohio State. And then, boom, Notre Dame out of the blue. So, I don't know, but like I said, I always Seantrell Henderson was the one where they're like, how are we ever going to survive without getting Seantrell Henderson? And then he ends up going to SC. He's there for 5 minutes. Then he transfers to the U, does nothing, goes like 7th round, kicks around the league for 3 or 4 years, and we don't miss him. Again, I don't know, but I wish the kid well. I think he's going to do great. Nevada, are you ready to move on to some Aaron Scott? Because I'm ready to move on from this one. And again, I do love the thing that you said that really there's nothing sure in the universe is if this kid just commits like Miles Lockhart and he's not, all the extra stuff, that he gets like 7 responses in his thread. But if he doesn't or he goes elsewhere, it's like 850 responses in one of our threads on BuckeyeScoop.com. So I would throw some Aaron Scott on. How are you feeling about Aaron Scott? Because he seems like a pretty sure thing. I know he's loving playing the game right now, but do you feel good about Aaron Scott at this point?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I feel like all the pieces are there with Aaron Scott. Ohio State. We talk about these things like we've missed on every recruit. We've gotten an awful lot of recruits. I feel like this is another one that Ohio State feels like they've got it well in hand. The NIL stuff is all taken care of. That's all wrapped up in a nice bow. It's Father's Day or his father's birthday rather coming up. He's going to give him his dad's a huge Ohio State fan, so I think we got this one in pretty good shape right there. I think everything's according to going according to plan. I always offer the disclaimer that even if we lost him, somehow we're going to be okay. But we're not going to. Like it's like Bryce West. Like, oh, what if we lose West and Scott? Then we've lost it, and we literally had people talking about this like for days, and I'm like, dude, we didn't lose either one, and we're not going to lose either one. So let's not worry. I always say worry is living out your worst fears over and over again. Let's not. We're in great shape. The class is great. Things are great, and I think this is going to be another great addition to Ohio State. Playing the game out, waiting for Dad's birthday, and going to get it's his dad's birthday, but we're all getting the present on July 30th.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, unless he's a member of the NWO and he like power bombs his dad through the table and spray paints like the UM on him. Like I can't imagine if your dad's been a lifelong Ohio State fan, you're committing on his birthday. It's special, and it's also a very frugal and smart thing to do because then you don't have to buy him a gift. You can save your $50 and just say, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to make the commitment your gift this year, so I don't have to get you anything." This is interesting. So this is something Brass Tacks, who's always here. I appreciate you, bro. He says, if religion is that big a factor, don't recruit those kids. That, again, you know, I don't know, but like that's something. It's interesting. Again, you have to sniff that out, but I think you got to get pretty far down the road with a kid before that ends up being the deciding factor. When a kid says, "I can really see myself at SC and I can really see myself at Ohio State," and then he reads, scripture, and then he says, "But I can't see myself at Notre Dame, so that's where I'm going to go." Like, I don't know how you fight that. Do you have any thought on that, Nevada?
Well, it's like I said earlier. It's everybody's devout to some degree. Whether it ranges from 0.1% to 100%, and it's just a question of finding out where he is on that. I think that's a tough thing to really sniff out in these things. And I think from Ohio State's perspective, I think if they're honest, they didn't quite know that it was quite to this level with Kingston. And look, I've talked to a lot of USC people, a couple of Notre Dame people, but a lot of USC people about Kingston. I got to be honest with you, religion was never raised. That was never, because all the kids that go to parochial schools in California, they go there because it's football. The parochial schools can recruit, they can bring in from out of district, they can bring in. That's why they all go there. So when you just see a kid at a Catholic school in Southern California, you're not thinking he's Catholic or he likes the Pope or whatever it is. You're just thinking he likes to play football. And I had never once heard, hey, Kingston really sees himself, as a preacher in Tonga afterwards, or, I'd never heard any of this. So this was a little bit of a surprise. My first inkling of a concern was when I heard he was going to go pray on like a religious retreat. It was like Aaron Rodgers going to the black hole or whatever he went to pray with the shaman so he could do the psychedelics and do the thing. But when he said he was doing that, I mean, that gave me a little bit of concern, but I had never heard that this was an issue. And that's from people at SC that are really close to Kingston, like really, really, really close. So I had never heard it as an issue. Not surprised that they missed it on that.
And honestly, like, just because the kid's religious, like, Anthony Gonzalez and I are both Catholics, and we both hate Notre Dame. So it was funny is in '05 when me and him were both like, we're going to play Notre Dame, and he went to Ignatius, and a lot of kids from Ignatius go to Michigan, they go to Notre Dame, not just football players, just students, because and a lot of them go to Notre Dame or Boston College, and I asked him, I was like, did you ever consider Notre Dame? He's like, no, I hate Notre Dame. And, we were guys that would go to mass on Sunday and, take the host and do the whole communion thing. And like, we hated Notre Dame. So again, like, it doesn't mean just because you're religious that means that you love Notre Dame. So again, it's part of the fact finding. Again, this is a weird one. But again, I think we'll be fine. And even so, I still think that anything can happen in college football. I think you just keep recruiting the kid. I really do. I mean, Marcus Freeman goes 4-8, and the admins have seen enough. Then the winds shift, and you just never know. I mean, like I said, I would never stop recruiting a kid. I wouldn't care when he committed. I don't think that you're being disrespectful because it's a transient life, man. And I'm telling you, Marcus Freeman, they give him a contract, and I hope Marcus does great every game except for against Ohio State as a teammate of mine. But again, Notre Dame. It's a hard place. It's probably one of the hardest places in the country to coach because you've got nobody in state, basically, from a talent perspective that's going to help you beat the teams you need to beat. And the Notre Dame brand, while it's bigger among older people, like young kids don't care about the Notre Dame brand because they haven't been good in so long. So, again, if Marcus, has another screw ups, like, I mean, they lost to Marshall, Cincinnati, like, I mean, they could, the thing could fall out. And they've had a lot of turnover. Like since Marcus took over, like Tommy Rees took off, Harry Heastan took off. Like there's been a lot of guys that have jumped ship on Marcus. So, I don't know. I keep recruiting the guy again with the portal. I think it's Nigel Glover's the kid from Northwestern, the Dayton kid. We had a question on that who literally he just got there and he's already in the portal because Pat Fitzgerald got fired. So again, like, in college football, man, anything can happen. I keep the relationships warm with everybody. And, if I'd have told you 2 months ago that Pat Fitzgerald would be fired by Northwestern, there isn't a human on this earth would have believed that. But you never know what could be coming down the pike with these institutions, with the board of trustees, with the presidents, the pressure. So I say just keep it warm.
Now I got a question for you on that.
Sure.
Like the hazing. I mean, the Pat Fitzgerald thing. He goes down because a player from years ago comes out and says they hazed me, and they investigate it. They decided he give him a 2-week slap on the wrist, and then the media gets a hold of it, and they come back, and the player says, "Yeah, they was really hazing, and even though Fitzgerald wasn't part of it, he should have known about it, and he ends up getting run." Okay, now I'm watching a podcast from an Ohio State ex-player talking the other day, and he was talking about how he used to haze the younger players by going to the shower and like urinating on them. And I'm like, wait a second. Who talks about stuff like this, especially given what happened to Fitzgerald? And in a situation like that, is that should the coach know about that? Should the coach be fired? Should the staff be fired? Should the player that just said that be disciplined? Why in the world would some player like that say that on a podcast and say that in front of everybody in the world? Like, what's your whole thought on the hazing thing in terms of where the culpability and where does the buck lie? Like you said, you were a player, you were a coach, you've been there in the room. Like, how much culpability these guys have for an ex-player urinating on the younger players?
I for me, man, I don't. I think that the coaches. Here's where it stands. At the end of the day, anything that happens in that building is the responsibility of Jim Tressel, or at this point Ryan Day. Anything, and that's just it's kind of like how Walmart could be 8 layers removed from some guy running a sweatshop or something. They might say, "Oh, we had no idea because it was in Indonesia and it's 85." But guess what? They're still tied to it, and at the end of the day, they're culpable for it. And it all comes up the food chain. So, again, I've seen. I mean, I didn't personally haze. I never wanted hazing. I never saw hazing. But I'm just one person. Like, I'm not omnipresent. I'm not in the building 24/7. Like when you're in training camp, when a lot of the hazing goes on, I'm just in my hotel room because everyone is in a hotel room with a roommate. And I never did any hazing. I was never hazed. So, but I mean, could it have gone on? Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Just because you're in a big hotel. There's 50 rooms or 60 rooms with 105 guys and the coaching staff in them. So, I don't know. I think that. It depends on the frequency too. I think if it's a one-time thing, it's different than if it's like every Tuesday it's time to go do something to somebody, like and there's like a pattern there. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's a good question, but I just think in my mind is the head coach. Is it his fault that someone got hazed 20 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever it was, and they did this? I mean, I don't know how the head coach is supposed to know, but at the same point in modern athletics, with the faux outrage and the agenda of some of these groups, like the board of trustees and the president, they're not going to wait around and let the football coach plead his case. They're just going to whack him and just say, "Hey, we put a bullet in the lame animal's head just to put it out of its misery, to minimize impact of lawsuits." Because I always think that when they make decisions like this, I always think that it comes down to, well, how big is the verdict going to be if they keep that guy there? Then they get sued. You get the lawsuit crew coming through, the contingency attorneys, and you knew all this and you kept him as the head coach and you ignored it and blah 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 blah. So it's like I think that always has a huge reason as to why they bullet a guy because Pat Fitzgerald's like their Archie Griffin. I mean, he is Northwestern football. He's the only guy that would take that job and not be trying to leave every single year. Which is why he was a lifer there. I mean, he's on the Ring of Honor. He won the butt kiss there. Like he is Northwestern football, but even still, it just goes to show you that you can't really trust anybody in that arena of college football because they will bullet you. We got a bunch of Notre Dame people in here. I love it. But yeah, I don't know. Like to me, here's my answer. If is Pat Fitzgerald responsible for what happened? Yes. Do I like that? No, because he's not omnipresent. He's not some spirit that can see every inch of the facility at every time. And if nobody tells him, how's he supposed to know if he's not in the room or if he's traveling for recruiting or if he's, well, he's at the Big Ten media days, like, which again, for him, that is about to be a miserable experience. Like, I thought that, losing the national championship was bad. Going through this hazing thing for those kids when they go to the Northwestern thing is going to be absolutely terrible because every single question is going to be about what did you know? What did you see? Did it happen to you? How do you survive? Whatever. So yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I'd love to know your thoughts on that. Do you think that the head coach is culpable to Nevada if there's a hazing incident that is unreported to him until a later date?
It all comes down to what did you know, what should you have known at the time, and the difference between fault and responsibility. Obviously it rolls up. It's your responsibility. It may not be your fault, but ultimately it is your responsibility to oversee your program. But should that be should it be a terminal offense for one of the ex Walton who's running Walmart because some manager in some store in Walmart did something bad? I mean, maybe ultimately his responsibility, but should he lose his job over it? I don't know. I mean, like you said, it's hard for you to kind of watch everything all the time in terms of what's going on in the program. So no, it's you just look. You just hope that the wheel of awful doesn't spin and fall on you. And as an Ohio State fan, that's what I hope for. When I get up, I don't want to read any articles about Ohio State. That's what made the whole Trussell thing so bad, was getting up every single day and scanning ESPN.com or whatever it is to see what was the story of the day. Remember the stupid Columbus Dispatch article about vehicles being registered, and that turned out to be bogus. And I mean, there was all these things that came out, and you're like, man, every day it just felt like another blow. And as an Ohio State fan, I'm just, knock on wood, but we've been able to avoid that up until this point. Hopefully that continues, and you just hope that the mob doesn't turn on you at some point, because when the mob comes, it's tough. You got to throw somebody to them. Somebody's head's got to roll to appease the mob, and look, I hope it just all sticks to football, because the prognosis for football for Ohio State is so great right now. I love our staff. I love our players. I love the culture of the team. I love the direction of the team. I love the way recruiting's going right now. And, I can't wait for 2020. Like you said, it's 10 days until training camp, and it's going to be unbelievable. We got some great position battles coming up on the offensive line. We got some great position battles coming obviously at the quarterback, with the most important position on the field. And got a lot of young guys that are super talented that haven't seen the field yet that we're going to get a chance to see for the first time. And that's exciting. And then we get to go to Notre Dame. And despite the fact that we lost Kingston, we get to go blow them out in Notre Dame. And nothing is better than scoring touchdowns in front of touchdown Jesus. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't get any better than that.
Oh, I totally agree. I can't wait for that game. I think that's going to be a biggie for Marcus, man. I mean, he's got us at home. It's not his first game. I think he kind of got a hall pass last year because they literally, it was literally his first game coaching ever was in the shoe against Ryan Day and against CJ Stroud. And they were in it for the first half. I mean, it was a tight game, 10-3 or 10-7. I think it was like 10-7. They scored that fullback dive touchdown down at the closed end. But I don't know. Like, it's going to be interesting because, they beat Clemson last year, but they lost to Marshall, and it's going to be a war. But yeah, you're right, because I agree with you about the headline thing, because you got to remember in 2018, and it literally was about this time was when Zach Smith got fired. And that just came out of nowhere. The whole Courtney Smith thing, all the allegations, all the Urban stuff came out. And, because it was right before Big Ten Media Day. They fired him. They made Brian Hartline the interim coach. Urban had to go to Media Day. Literally, I think that he fired him like the day that he got to Media Day, which was like this Wednesday. And then, before we knew it, Urban's on trial, and then he ends up resigning because he, I just think that he hated Michael Drake so much that he couldn't take it anymore. But, at that point, when all the Zach Smith stuff started, and trust me, you know how we feel about Zach. I mean, I love Zach, and I thought he got railroaded. But when all the Zach Smith stuff went down in Nevada, did you think that was going to be the end of Urban Meyer as our head coach in 2018?
No, I really didn't. But, I underestimated just how much he hated Drake and how much he felt betrayed by the OSU Board of Trustees. and by the president. And I'm firmly convinced that he'd still be the head coach at Ohio State. People want to talk about, he burns out and no, he got betrayed. He got stabbed in the back. And, when you're stabbed in the back and you've got that pain of that cyst kind of going there and you're kind of going, why am I putting up? I've got more money than I'll ever spend in 7 lifetimes. Why am I doing this for these people? So that's why I've always said, under the right circumstances, I believe Meyer could come back. And I know I may be the only person in the whole world saying that, but if something happened and they jetted off to the Pats or whatever the circumstances were, and they needed somebody to come in, would they turn back to Urban Meyer? Maybe. Would he come back? You never say never. I wouldn't take anything he said right now as gospel on that, because if that offer was made, you might see him back at the sideline one more time. And boy, what a great show that would be.
Yeah, and I think it really depends on how Luke does at Wisconsin. If Luke crushes it and they go 11-1, and we see him in the Big Ten championship game this year, then his stock rises. And if something would happen to Ryan, then I think Luke's the guy. But if Luke stinks and they go 6-6 and he's not, again, you're only as faithful as your options when you're one of these athletic directors or you're the president at Ohio State. And as much as I'd love to see Mike Vrabel, I just can't see him leaving Tennessee, because Tennessee, like that owner loves him. They fired the GM. Vrabel has a ton of power, and that stadium that they're building is about to be awesome in Nashville. So, if he has a good year, I can't see Vrabes getting whacked. And even if he did get whacked in Tennessee, he's the NFL coach of the year. I'm sure he'd have a head coaching job in the NFL in about 5 minutes. So I don't see him as a college guy, but Urban would be interesting, because I just think that, the way it went down with Jacksonville and the way that sour taste in your mouth and all that, like I don't know. Like I said, Dick Vermeil came back and coached the Rams, in the 90s. He'd been out of it for 20 years. So Joe Gibbs came back and coached the Redskins, and he'd been out for 15 years or whatever. So, crazier stuff happens. And if there's one thing that's a narcotic, it's coaching football. And these guys, man, once they get a taste of that, they get a taste of that money, and they get a taste of that limelight, and they can't get enough of it. And that competitive thing gets bubbled back up. And especially the biggest thing for him is he'd still have the infrastructure. He'd still have Pantone, he'd still have Mick, he'd still have, his right-hand guys already in the building. So it's kind of turnkey at that point, as opposed to having to go see who you can get on your staff, see who you can, because that's the hardest part for a guy like Urban right now, is like, if he wanted to get the band back together, how many of the people, in the band, would want to come to the positions that he would have available? Because a lot of his guys that were really good are head coaches now, so they're not going to want to come be coordinators or position coaches. So what jobs do they have? Can you get it all back together? So, well, it's a great show. I know, it's so funny. A lot of people love the thought of Urban coming back. But the funniest thing about Urban is that a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't want to see us run the quarterback in JT." And I'm like, dude, did you watch his last season? We had Dwayne Haskins, who's the slowest quarterback in school history. He could throw it 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, whatever. The greatest numbers, best throwing season we've ever had. So, people underestimate Urban's adaptability to modern football. And he's the guy that I know studies football more than probably any human being on this earth. He's always watching film, studying it. So he's always staying up with the latest and greatest that's going on in the game. So this is a great show, Nevada. We have any final thoughts as we bid Kingston adieu and we wrap this show up?
I'm saying goodbye to Kingston, but I'm not closing the door on Kingston. I think when things turn on the book of Hebrews, man, it could turn back if he gets to, Second Kings or First Corinthians or something like that. So I think we just got to give him a different book of the Bible to maybe go to the New Testament. If we go to the New Testament, everything could be different then. You know what I'm saying? That maybe go to Revelations or something like that, and maybe he'll have a revelation that the Buckeyes are where he should be. And so don't. This isn't goodbye, Kingston. This is just this is a temporary farewell. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, again, he doesn't even enroll probably till January. So 4 or 5 years I don't know if he red shirts or whatever. With the transfer portal, man, you always keep everybody warm, because he might get there. They might stink on defense. He might hate Al. There's so many variables now. And he might hate Al Golden. He might hate him. He might, because again, there's two coaches you deal with when you're a football player. There's the guy that recruits you, and then there's the guy that coaches you. The guy that recruits you, it's like when you're dating a girl and everything's just like perfect. Your first few dates, first month or whatever, everything's amazing. Nobody sees any warts. But then like once you get there, then it's like, okay, now we're married. Okay, I found out she's a slob, found out she can't cook, found out she gained 30 pounds. Like there's all these warts that all of a sudden show up. And you're like, well, what was it like that when we were dating or whatever? So to me, man, I just think that you always keep these kids warm, man, because these kids are so emotional and sometimes things aren't what they seem, And again, like EA, Gayote, the kid that came from Gorman, I mean, he played as a special teamer for us last year. He was a 5-star kid that we would have killed to get. And if we would have gotten him, the servers would have broken on BuckeyeScoop.com just because he was such a big recruit. But then he ends up going to SC, doesn't do anything, not the same player. And then he transfers here for his last 2 years. And he's a 5-star guy that literally did nothing, didn't get drafted. He didn't even get invited to rookie minicamp. And it's nothing against the kid because injuries happen and some guys don't develop at the rate that you'd expect. But just kind of is what it is. So we'll see where it is with Kingston. So any final things of that as we wrap this?
Now on to Aaron Scott. Let's go. And also, I don't think we're done with Marquise Lightfoot either. So let's keep an eye on that one. There might be something percolating on that one too. So keep an eye on that one.
I'm telling you, there's a more volatile program in the country than the Miami Hurricanes. So, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for tuning in on this this final podcast of the Kingston Philly Massa era. Good luck to you at Notre Dame, young man. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you. Over 20,000 as we march to 25,000 YouTube subscribers. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys. Again, you guys are the best. We are going to be on BuckeyeScoop.com all night diagnosing what went down with the commitment of Kingston Valley to Notre Dame. So we appreciate you. If you enjoyed this content, please click like, click subscribe, click that little dinner bell that will tell you when we go live. Shout out where you guys are from. We had Peru. We got someone from Peru watching. It's amazing to see where you guys are watching from. We had Indiana, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida, Naples, Canton, everywhere. So we appreciate you guys doing that. Write that down in the comments down below. As always, we appreciate all the feedback. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, I know it's your Sunday, kind of wrapping up the weekend. I hope you guys had a great weekend. We had a great time. That's some nice family in town, so it was a good time. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Jump on BuckeyeScoop.com. If you guys have not subscribed, and you guys want the best inside information in the game, you want the best community in the game, BuckeyeScoop.com needs to be your new home. We are grinding on there. Tons of intel, tons of insight. Just a fantastic time. So thank you guys so much. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.